Hey guys, this is our next project. It's a 1976 F-250 Super Cab with a 360 with a 5.9 liter V8. This was a nice running truck when we first got it. We were able to do a few tests on it. We were able to check the compression. We had uniform compression over all 8 cylinders. There was no smoke or burning oil. We had good oil pressure and clean spark plugs. Because it was running good and we had good compression, we were able to do a lot of tests on it. The only issue we had was there was one hydraulic lifter that was tapping. So we will fix that in the next video as we tear down this engine.
As Cord mentioned, this is our 1976 Ford F-250 project with the 360 cubic inch engine, the 5.9 liter. It was a running truck, but it had been sitting a while. So we're going to take you through today what we're going to do to this engine to have a good, solid, reliable vehicle. When they have been running and sitting a while, there's some issues, common issues we found that come up with those. So obviously we pull the engine. First step is cleaning. We're going to clean the outside. And it's not just for appearance. It helps you for maintenance, spot oil leaks, and then just general overall appearance. Second step, by disassembling, we can clean inside, take care of carbon buildup. Typically, these engines will build up carbon on the top of the heads underneath the valve covers. Those can come loose in time and clog your oil galleys, clog oil getting to your valves. The other thing we're going to do with this engine is clean out the oil pan. Any sludge that builds up inside the oil pan over time can cause issues. And again, when you've had one sitting for a while and you start it up, it's running good, and you start using it, these are the problems that come up after just a very short period of time. Oil leaks. So we're going to put all new gaskets in this engine for a couple of reasons. These gaskets just dry up over time from sitting. When you come back in the expansion and contraction engine from heating, you'll get some cracks on those old gaskets and have leaks. The seals, a rear seal, most common was a leak area on these. Just from time and sitting, that could cause a leak, but also some of these still use, and this year Ford used the old rope seal, rear seal. We're going to replace that with a new neoprene rubber seal, which makes a big difference. The other issue with these, it can be your water jackets. When it's been sitting a while, the scale can build up inside the cylinder heads, inside the engine. So when you start using it, that scale come loose, it can lodge in your thermostat housing, and then ultimately get to your radiator, cause some heating problems that you didn't have initially. Also, your freeze plugs. On the freeze plugs in these engines, you won't be able to tell just from looking on the outside that they're damaged or weak. The rust and corrosion occurs from the inside out on those. So again, you fire this truck up, you start using, and then you get an antifreeze leak. You get a coolant leak on one part of the engine. It's very hard to get to when this is actually in the truck, especially those near the motor mounts. Also, we found that working on these trucks, that motor mounts are a common failure. The rubber sits, it dry rots. On this one of the two motor mounts was completely separated and bad. So again, you start using the truck, you have a broken motor mount that can flex, cause frame damage, issues with your transmission, wiring, etc. So this is what we're going to run through on this engine. We're going to clean inside and out. We're going to replace all the gaskets and seals. We're going to replace our rod and main bearings. We're going to replace the hydraulic lifters, all new hydraulic lifters on the engine, and also going to replace the timing gear and chain. One of the first things we're going to do is clean the engine. Cleaning is very important for not just appearance, but it helps with heat dissipation off the engine and also maintenance. It's much easier to anticipate a problem and fix a problem if your engine's clean. The other big thing is you have vacuum hoses, you have wiring harnesses that are laying on top of the engine. When that grease builds up, it can break down your vacuum hoses, it can break down the insulation on your wiring harnesses and tear those down. Plus, it's just easier when you've got to come do anything on the engine, it's just clean to work on. Cleaning the inside of the engine is really critical. When the engine's been sitting a while like this one has, your carbon deposits on the top of the engine can dry up. And then when you start utilizing the engine again, they can come loose. And when those come loose, they're already past where the oil is flowing through the oil filter. So those deposits of carbon can get into specifically on these engines, and get into the oil galleys that feed your valve train. So your rock arms, your push rods can be starved for oil and cause some major issues. So you start that, you've got a good solid engine like this one, like Cord mentioned, we have good oil pressure, we had good compression. We know we're not born, we got a good solid engine to build here, but you can quickly cause damage to parts of the engine with carbon buildup inside the engine. So we want to make sure we clean off the carbon here. We want to make sure there's no sludge buildup in the oil pan that could clog your pickup screen and cause some oil feed issues there. While we're working on these engines, one of the things that's really important to look at is while you have the front cover off to replace your seals and your gaskets, it's an easy and quick time to replace your timing gear and chain. Those will just wear over the course of the engine, and also some of the composite material that they use on the timing, on the camshaft gear specifically on these, they wear, and you can see the notches from the chain on there. So what the effect of that is that your valves are slightly out of time. Another thing, while you have this engine disassembled to clean, to replace all the gaskets and seals, another thing that we're going to do is replace all of our rod and main bearings. And we do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, we can take the rods and mains apart and inspect to make sure we don't have any issues. You don't want to have a good engine, and if we have let's say for instance there was an issue on one of the rod bearings, we don't want to throw a rod on a good engine and have that problem right off the bat. The other thing is, growing up, my dad and my uncle, anytime they had a rear main seal leak, whenever that was replaced and they had the oil pan, they always replaced the main and rod bearings. And that does two things for you. It ensures that your new seal works properly. Also, it maintains your high oil pressure. You're not losing oil pressure for those bearings, so it keeps your valves, your lifters working properly, keeps your valves getting well, and extends the life of your engine. So what we do with these, we do initial teardown of your engine to inspect and see what parts and everything we're going to need. Also to check the size of our bearings and make sure they're standard or undersized bearings. And what we've had really good luck. We order all those parts and have them shipped in as for availability and for pricing. We've had great luck with Summit Racing. We've had good luck with Jegs, J&L are some of the great providers we use, especially for some of these older engines are not in stock anymore at your AutoZone or O'Reilly's. So we can order all those in, have them delivered directly to the shops, and we're getting ready to go. All the parts are sitting there waiting on us, and they're good quality parts, and they're each one of those places have great customer service, and their parts are out to you very quickly. One of the other common issues, specifically with these Ford FE family engines, was the hydraulic lifters. So although we had good compression, great oil pressure, the oil was running good, we did have a noisy lifter. And there's a lot of cause of those, but one of the common reasons when it's sitting a while, you can imagine that if this engine's been sitting for months or even years, the valve spring pressure is maintained on that hydraulic lifter for that entire amount of time. So when you start utilizing the engine again, sometimes those lifters get stuck through oil buildup or carbon in a collapsed position. And again, that's why we're getting a noise on that. So what we do when we go back through this engine and refresh it, just for peace of mind and for speed, honestly, we come through and we replace all the lifters. That way we know all those issues addressed. Some of your old school mechanics take those apart, clean those and reuse them, which is fine as well. But just for time and for peace of mind, we just replace all those hydraulic lifters. Okay, and we're going to talk about common problems when it's been, when the old running when parked adage. Like Cord said, this engine was running when we got it, so we know we had a good solid engine to work with. But when you get the engine running, especially when it's running well, you put it into use, there's some issues that come up pretty quickly. The carbon buildup on the side of the engine can come loose, lodge in, cause some oil feed problems. That's very common. Your freeze plugs on the side of the engine are very common. Again, you can't see that a freeze plug is how corroded or how rusted it is from the outside. That occurs from the inside out of the engine. So you start using it for a short period of time, and then you have an antifreeze leak through your freeze plugs. Your gaskets and seals, even if there wasn't oil leaks when it's parked, when you start using the engine, the hot oil starts going through it. It goes through a few expansion and contraction cycles. You have this engine and you have these other issues come up. You start having an oil leak and antifreeze leak. Also, the scale can build up in these engines when they're sitting, especially if they're sitting without any coolant in them. That scale can come loose. It can lodge in your thermostat housing, cause heating issues, cause your thermostat not to function properly. And then a lot of times that scale will get in the top of your radiator, clog those cores, and so you have a heating problem pretty quickly after you start using it. So we want to make sure we clean out those water jackets, clean all of our oil galleys, clean the sludge on those engines to make it where you don't have an issue with that. One of the things when you get a truck that it's been sitting a while, you get a good solid vehicle like this, you get it running, it can be very frustrating when you get it running well and then you start running into a series of small issues, the oil leaks, the antifreeze leaks, heating. You start having all these issues that are not difficult to take care of, but the cumulative effect of those makes it really makes a frustrating process. Plus, if you can pull these engines, they're easy to work. For instance, the freeze plugs, you can take care of that really easily while it's out instead of a much more difficult process working with it in the truck. Same thing with your oil pan, your oil seals. All of those are much easier to take care of now while it's on the stand. You can do a better job. Plus, it saves you having to deal with that frustration as you're using the truck.
Come back for the next part. We're going to be tearing down this engine, getting it cleaned and reassembled, and get it ready to put back in.